It's, sending everything to our vital organs, and our hair gets forgotten about, unfortunately. Be things like massaging, microneedling. I would actually advise microneedling maybe more as important to understand that with the menopause and perimenopause, that can be more permanent.
And I'd also like us to touch on ethnic and Black women's concerns. Okay, let's move on, because in this segment, I really wanted to talk about Black women. And a lot of what we see, definitely not the only alopecia related problem, but what we see a lot is traction alopecia from braids and weaves that we wear. Can you explain what that is, why it happens, and then can we prevent it? Is it preventable or something that women have to know is going to happen and live with it?
Yeah, so traction alopecia is caused by prolonged repetitive pulling on the hair follicle. So what it does, it's causing inflammation of the hair follicle and breakage, and it's weakening the hair follicle slowly over time from the repetitive pulling. If it's continued over many years, then it can cause permanent damage and even scarring. So that's the point where you're more limited to what can be done. So I'd say with traction alopecia, the best advice is to prevent it as soon as you can. So as soon as you can stop the pulling, you've got a chance to help the hair follicles recover. And in this situation, so as long as there hasn't been any permanent damage caused, the hair follicle tends to go into a dormant phase, and it just needs a helping hand to be re-stimulated into a healthy growth cycle again.
Okay.
So a really nice treatment available that I do offer in the clinic is platelet-rich plasma for this particular concern. So that uses your body's own platelets to stimulate dormant hair follicles. And I've had some really lovely results with ladies with this exact condition, with the traction alopecia caused from tight hairstyles and braiding. So there are things available. The biggest advice is just try and stop it as soon as you start seeing any damage. If you're able to stop, that is the best advice. Unfortunately, I know it's not ideal. Give the hair follicle.
Yeah, there's so many reasons why braiding and using weaves are part and parcel of some of our appearance. I'm not saying for every Black woman, and I know that it's not just Black women. I know that other Caucasian and Asian women will also use some type of extensions and weaves, maybe not as much as the Black women. But the question I have to ask is, okay, do we say don't do these styles because they can really, or if you have to do these styles, keep them on for the briefest possible time? So I know you mentioned the pull, then keep doing this over and over again, and then the length of time that braid stays on the hair. So what would you say? And I'm interested in this personally because my daughter is at that age where she's 15, at that age where braids, this type of braid, that type of braid, and she does leave her hair to rest in between braids. But what would you say generally to, somebody who loves having her hair in braids? How would you say to prevent this from?
This is the thing, because you want to have the styles that you enjoy having. But there's little things that you can do just to maybe prevent these things. So don't ignore if you're starting to feel itching, or if you start seeing rashes or redness on the scalp. If you start seeing that, then your scalp's telling you that it's too much and it needs a break. I don't know if there's a way of having the braids just a little looser. So just loosening them, this will extend the longevity of how long that you can have that hairstyle in for. And doing things like PRP as a treatment to help with hair follicles that have already been slightly damaged, but also even consider it as a preventative. So this is treatment that you can have whilst you have the braids in. You don't have to remove the braids to have treatment like that done. So you could do a treatment like that just to give nutrients to the hair follicles whilst they're in that hairstyle and they're being pulled. But ideally, if you're just able to take breaks, not have them too tight, and don't ignore signs from your scalp if you're having itching or any visible signs of inflammation.
Yeah, those are very good points. And to add to that, I think is as your hair is being braided and you feel it's being pulled tightly, speak up and say, oh, this is too tight. Our hairdresser they're really very good and would say to you, how is this? Is this too tight? And I think sometimes, it's not just about your ability to withstand the pain. It's really important. And those points you've made about itching, soreness and all that, those are really useful signs your body saying, hey, this is not right, and don't just endure this for the sake of beauty. So I appreciate these tips. Yeah, thank you.
And it's not that, you can never have them again. It's a sign that maybe you just need a break and then you can go back to them. Yeah.
Good. Okay. All right. I can't let you go without just chipping a word in on Black women and hair health and protective styling, just because, in your business, you've probably come across, and it's not a new thing. There have been conversations, there's been research here and there. What are your thoughts about using hair relaxers for African hair to soften, straighten? Any thoughts? Do you come across people concerned about those issues, and what do you say to them?
I do, and I have seen women come in who've had these treatments done and it's been too harsh and they've had hair breakage, which is really sad to see. I think they're different these days, perhaps to what they used to be. I do think the products are much better. They are safer, a bit more gentle on the hair. But ultimately, these treatments, they are changing the structure of the hair, which puts the hair at risk of being weaker. Some of these treatments, they can cause irritation or even burns to the scalp.
Yes.
And I know that we spoke before about, there's myths and things around possible cancer risks and things. I think that there's no real sort of scientific evidence behind this. I think it comes a lot down to what the condition of the scalp is like when these treatments are being applied. So the most important advice is to have a very healthy scalp when having these treatments, because I think that's where the risk can sometimes come from. If the scalp's already burnt and inflamed and you're having these treatments on top of a scalp in that condition.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So let's move on to treatment as a soft topic within this conversation. And I know you've alluded to some already, but I just want to narrow things down. You've mentioned SMP, you've mentioned hair tattooing, so SMP, scalp micropigmentation. If somebody catches hair loss early which would be the ideal thing, so we come early, tell us what's the treatment ladder? What is that works? And can you separate that from what is hype on TikTok? And I'm sorry to keep calling TikTok.
There's lots of hype on TikTok. It's a minefield. That's a good question with the laddering, and where do you start? Because there are lots of options available, and like you say, the sooner you can catch it, the better. I think the one that is the most well-researched and the go-to for someone who first starts seeing that pattern type hair loss is the Minoxidil, because it doesn't require a prescription. It's something you can buy online and start using at home, and it is shown to work. I have actually started using it myself a little bit in my hairline, because I just noticed the front of the hairline getting slightly weaker. And I like to trial these things. I use myself as a guinea pig. So I think that's if you actually start seeing a pattern hair loss, and you don't want to self-diagnose if that's been confirmed by someone, but it's very early stage, that's a nice place to start.
Can I just interrupt you and just ask, is there anybody who can't use Minoxidil? And I say that I haven't checked it recently. Of course, I'm familiar with it. But in terms of your work, are there any people that you'd say, no, don't do this? Instead, talk to me or talk to your doctor.
So if you're below the age of 18, it's not recommended to use. And it's with the topical Minoxidil, it's okay for most people. It's actually an interesting point is if you have pets in the house, you don't want them to be exposed to Minoxidil. So you've got to be very careful. It's quite toxic to pets. So that's an important one to mention. So just make sure you wash your hands well after using and don't let them go near your head or anything. Another one is because you have the oral versions as well. So you have the oral Minoxidil and there's also finasteride. So finasteride is the one that women shouldn't be using, particularly women who are hoping to get pregnant or
Yes.
have a baby.
Yes.
So, but topical minoxidil is pretty safe actually. So it was originally found as a blood pressure medication. That's how it was discovered. And as a side effect, they found that it was having excessive hair growth. So that's why they made it into a topical treatment and rebranded it as Regain, which is the most commonly known minoxidil on the market. So it is boosting circulation. That's how it's working, and extending the anagen phase, the growth cycle of the hair follicle.
Okay. All right. So that's the bottom of the ladder. So we're stepping up now. What would be the next thing that you'd consider?
So another kind of, just one other bottom of the ladder one would be the low level laser. So again, both of these things are good for more advanced hair loss as well, but this is something that you can start with at home quite easily yourself. But the low level laser is really lovely. It's increasing cellular activity within the hair follicle. And I always think of it as our hair follicles like a flower, and the low level lasers like the sunlight. So it's giving your hair energy. And it's a really nice one to do at home to just reduce the speed of the hair from thinning and falling out. So those are the two starters, but also for advanced hair loss, you can use them as well. The next step, you'd want to be looking at some in-clinic treatments. There's in-clinic microneedling, like I mentioned before. I know lots of people microneedle at home with derma rollers or dermal stamps, you may have seen. It's fine to do. I would just be hesitant doing at home. So you want to make sure that you're cleansing the needles well. You want to be using an alcohol cleanser, make sure you're not leaving any bacteria, because I think it's easy just to be using them and then shove them in your cupboard and get them back out and use them again. So you just want to be careful, you're keeping them nice and clean at home. And don't go over a needle length of 0.5 millimeters. Anything more than that, it's unnecessary, and you can start causing some damage to the scalp, in my opinion. You just want to be stimulating blood flow. So 0.5 is plenty to be doing that. And it's quite fiddly at home. I think if you've just got some hair loss in your hairline and you're using the derma roller or derma stamp at home, it's quite easy to do. But if you're trying to do the whole of your scalp, it's a lot of work because you're doing it regularly and you want to keep that up. So doing microneedling in clinic may be a bit more effective and just a bit easier to do as well. And what they can do in clinic, which I do in mine, is use serums along with the microneedling. And these are serums derived from stem cells. So it's giving the hair follicle anti-inflammatory properties, proteins, growth factors. So that's a nice place to start if you're seeing hair loss and it's maybe just slightly progressed, or if you've had an episode of something like hair shedding and you just want to give your hair a boost, a kick up the bum really to get back into a healthy growth cycle.
Yeah, get going, yeah.
Another one that's slightly more invasive is the PRP, the platelet-rich plasma. So again, that's one that you can do in clinic. It's taking a sample of your own blood, and that's being spun at high speed in something called a centrifuge. And then that's separating the plasma from the rest of the blood components. And then suspended in the plasma is a higher quantity of platelets. And then that's injected back into the scalp. In a similar way to the serums, it has anti-inflammatory properties, proteins, growth factors, but that's being injected. So it's a little bit more invasive and it's getting more to the root of the hair follicle.
Okay.
So if someone's hair loss was a bit more advanced, that would be a nice one to do. And then I guess the last stage would be, like a hair transplant. I'm not anti-hair transplants. I just think it's very difficult for women to have hair transplants. It's very rare for a woman to be a suitable candidate. But if the hair loss is permanent, that is an option. Or you have the scalp micropigmentation, which is replicating the hair follicles. So that's good in cases where hair loss is permanent.
Okay, so you've brought that in nicely. So what is it exactly you said about, the hair follicles? Exactly what is going on with scalp micropigmentation? And if you wouldn't mind just saying who should have it and who shouldn't, because those I think are really important descriptors, so that we make sure that somebody doesn't inadvertently go for a procedure that might be harmful.
Yeah, because you want to make sure that your artist is giving you the right advice as well, and not just treating you for the money, because it's not suitable for everyone. If you're keeping your hair long, you want to be able to have enough hair on the scalp to camouflage the tattoo. So if you have large areas of bald patches or very exposed scalp, the tattoo's going to look strange, it's not going to look authentic, and you're going to be able to see it. So you still want to be able to have enough hair to camouflage in with the tattoo. And then if hair loss is very extensive, you have large areas of bald spots on your head, maybe that's when you need to start considering something like a hair system. The scalp micropigmentation's amazing in a lot of different cases, and I've treated women in their 80s with the tattoo. So it's suitable for all different ages as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, what would you say for someone who's considering it? Because you made a good point. If a practitioner is being unethical and just wants to get people's money, what red flag would you suggest the innocent member of the public to be on the lookout for with making that decision?
Yeah, so with kind of what to look out for in an artist.
Yes.
I would say you want them to have maybe some level of knowledge of the hair and scalp. It'd be good for them to come up with why the hair loss is happening, because you want to try and predict what that hair loss is going to do in 5 to 10 years time, so that the tattoo's still going to look good in many years to come. So if they're just going ahead and treating without actually sitting down and talking through maybe what kind of hair loss you have and what it's going to look like going forward, that could be a bit of a red flag. And seeing if you can see healed results of their work as well. So making sure that they've worked on long hair before and they have proven results of what their density work looks like, and making sure that they're at least level 4 qualified.
Okay, that's interesting. So making sure they've got the right qualification. I believe you're a member or affiliated with the British Association. I can't say it now. The British Association of Hair Restoration Surgeons. Have I got that correctly?
That's correct. Yeah, it's such a mouthful. It'd be easier if there was a shorter version. But yes, there's actually only a handful of us scalp micropigmentation artists that are affiliate members of the bars, which is such an honor to be a part of. But yeah, so making sure if they're not members of the bars, because to be honest, there's really very few that are, but just ensuring that they have the correct insurance and that they're registered with their local councils, and inquiring, who did you do your training with and what level is your training.